Freaky Friday is intended for adults and is a show featuring adult conversations. Topics may vary, but are focused on human sexuality, fetish, and topics of intimate nature. Some may feel uncomfortable watching this show, and some topics may take you out of your comfort zone. We encourage everyone to stay and learn, as we hope this is an educational show, but stress that viewer discretion is advised. And if a topic makes you feel uncomfortable, please do not continue watching. Welcome to Freaky Friday. Welcome to Freaky Friday, where we dare to talk about taboo topics like fetish, bondage, sex, vibrators, and more. This isn't your dad's Friday night programming, but your mom loves it. Welcome to Freaky Friday, hosted by Mr. erSiN, who is the unboxable, uncanny advocating creator known as the Indie Comics Devil, who will tempt you with his devilish tales of fetish, monsters, and more. Also the giver of free hugs and spends. Everyone watching this program will get virtual free hugs and spends. It's time to get on with the show. Welcome to Freaky Friday. Music provided by the YouTube Audio Library. Produced by Silent Partner. Song name, Tied Up. Warning and disclaimer. The views and opinions expressed on this live feed are those of the guests, speakers, and or hosts, and do not necessarily reflect the beliefs, official policies, ethics, or positions of the content providers, advertisers, additional hosts, and or guests, hosting sites, groups, or entities attached to this programming. Viewer discretion is advised. Hey everybody, as you guys can see, we got some videos lined up. You're seeing our consent. That's from the BDSM survey, so I actually go heavy into it. We're going to actually read that tonight. I saw something on TikTok, and I had a whole different idea for the show today. This is probably going to be our last live show of the summer until after Memorial Day. A lot of the shows, because of the schedule that I have coming up, it may have me just having these go live, and I'm not going live. I mean pre-canning these. So this is our last possibly live show of the summer. We have Tampa Bay coming up, where you can find me, just as a heads up, just for the future. We have MegaCon. We have New York Comic Con coming up. We have a few other things that might pop up, smaller shows. I might be going to South Carolina actually next weekend for their MegaCon. So there's a lot happening over the next few weeks, and we keep just adding shows because since 2020 is somewhat over for most places, things have opened up, but they're on top of each other nowadays. So it's a little stressful. We're going to get past it, and I wanted to talk about consent with everybody tonight. And I wanted to do that by playing the video that inspired this. And we're going to talk about it. We're going to read what consent is, and we're going to explain why it's important. For anyone tuning in who's unsure of what consent is that thing that you should have for a relationship to do things to someone beyond sexually, even. Let me put it this way, and we're going to read consent when we get back. Consent is something you should be striving for from a person and not assuming you have. I know that there's arguments back and forth, and we'll touch on some of it. But realistically, if you don't have consent for something, and this even works in the vanilla world, and we'll talk about that, then you shouldn't be doing it. But let's start with the videos, and we'll go from there. So here we go. You guys are going to watch first the video someone else posted, and then my response to it. And I'll be right back. But first, here's the video.
If you had 24 hours with me and I couldn't say no, what would we do?
Hi, I've seen this video in my feed a few times now, and luckily I've only seen people giving like goofy responses. But I want to know the purpose of this video, because it feels like what we're doing here is giving people the opportunity to view us as a rag doll for a day. It feels very gross and wrong to present ourselves like, what would you do if consent didn't matter and I was just available to you? I don't think it's a great example for young women on this app, and I think we can do better. That's it. That's all I got.
And then there was my response to that.
If you had 24 hours with me and I couldn't say no, what would we do?
Look, I fully understand this was probably meant as a joke, but want to just touch on something. We should spend time to get to know each other. We shouldn't just be doing things and sticking things into each other just because it's fun. We stop getting to know each other, and it's things like this that kind of show that. Consent is hugely important. I'm from the fetish community, and the entire BDSM relationship is built around consent and trust. How could you have any trust or even be able to consent to things you don't understand? This is something that could be cute if you were offering it to someone you'd been with for years that you knew wouldn't take advantage of it. But to say it out loud like that, it's dangerous. And I know you probably didn't mean it, but we have to address that. We have to talk about that. We have to talk about how important consent is and getting to know each other, knowing what each other likes. This could be a fun experiment if you knew the person, but if you don't, it could be dangerous. So please get to know the people you do things with. So obviously wasn't thrilled with any bit of that idea that women put this out. And again, I know that they mean it as a joke, and I get it, or they're trying to get attention. I think the best way for us to start is to start with what consent is. So why don't we read that, and we'll go from there. This is consent from my actual BDSM survey. And here we go. Understanding the legal definition of consent is difficult, as it varies by state, and even lawyers argue about what consent is. In the BDSM community, the idea of consent seems to vary. Split over acronyms are best to use. SSC or RAC, maybe PRIC, or any of the new ones being created are argued over in the fetish community. Simple truth is the idea of consent and who is responsible of consent changes over time. There is no clear idea of what consent is, even in the BDSM culture. When laws fail us, morals have to come into play. Even in our courts, we are guided by morals. So let's talk about what it is to get consent based on simple right and wrong. While most of play is the dom's responsibility, all of those who submit should have the understanding of what is being done to them. I want you to understand the laws are catching up in the BDSM culture. Police and courts are better trained to understand consent in dynamics. So here are simple ways to know if you have consent to dominate. First, if it's your first time playing, ask for consent for everything you want from the sub before play begins. That means, yes, telling them where you're going to touch them, how you're going to touch them, and what you're going to touch them with is very important, including, and I know there's the argument, oh, I want spontaneity, I want to be surprised. Be surprised when you know someone better. And I said it in the video, we rush this intimacy. We want intimacy with strangers, and that's what this generation, I believe, is missing right now, because you're not earning the intimacy. You're not having those hour-long conversations. You're not getting to know people. Most people don't even know the middle name of the person they're sleeping with, let alone anything about what consent is. And consent's a difficult thing, and we're going to continue to find out about that. In the BDSM community, do not gag anyone you are playing with for the first time. Use safe words and signals. This is something I think the vanilla culture needs to adapt. If we all understood each other safe words and signals. Now, most people don't know what a safe word is outside the BDSM community, I find. So it's this simple. It's a way to say stop without saying stop. Now, why is that important in a vanilla culture? Because let's be honest, stop and no get used to tease people. There is a circumstance where couples are playful with each other and they'll say, oh no, stop it. And they don't mean it. And this is part of where the confusion comes in with consent. But there is a playfulness behind it that's just not going to go away. And we have to understand that that playfulness is going to continue in relationships. We tease each other, but there has to be a clear line. So in the BDSM community, there's something called safe words. If someone calls a safe word, play has to stop. Same thing with anything else. And let me stress this to anyone. If someone is telling you to stop and they're using a safe word, even in the vanilla culture, do not try to convince them it's okay to continue. This is something that BDSM culture teaches us. A safe word means end, stop. Now, as a dom, meaning the dominant, you can ask the submissive or slave, do you want to be untied? Where do you want to go from here? Because sometimes they will tell you, well, I just wanted you to stop this one action. I'm okay with continuing if we don't do that anymore. Or they might need something untied. But in the vanilla community, this could also be, I'm feeling uncomfortable, but I don't want to disappoint you, because that becomes something where we hear people feel like almost forced into things. And I know it's weird to ask consent to be able to kiss someone. And I get a kiss is one of those harder things. There is some magic to that first kiss. But being able to talk to someone beforehand and knowing where you're both heading, that's important. And yes, that's a hard conversation, but it is one you should have. You should have a conversation about whether or not you want to be sexual with each other before you are sexual with each other in the vanilla community. In the BDSM community, I actually have a BDSM survey I hand to people I'm going to play with. I've had them for years. I only made it a comic 2 years ago. I've had that at my disposal since I was able to print things, and I've worked on that survey for decades now. I can't explain to you enough how important it is to understand both people so there's not a misunderstanding of what consent is. Because even with that defined consent, at times someone will not feel like they're in the mood to do it or want to be part of it, or they're just having a bad day. And they have that safe word that makes everyone feel safe. And in the vanilla community, we don't have that word. And yes, words can get confusing. And someone who says no, because you have those situations sometimes where someone will say no, and you'll have a man say, "Are you sure?" And a woman might feel like they were going to let someone down, or even vice versa with the gender, or any person, one human being to another, might look at them and go, "Oh, you want me to stop? Are you sure?" And they might go, "Oh no, you can keep going," because they don't want to disappoint someone. While a safe word instantly should interact, okay, what's going wrong? Because so many people ask, "Do you want me to stop?" Not what's wrong. And this is something I've made sure to adapt into myself. It's not about continuing at that point. It's about understanding that play should stop, or whatever you're doing should stop, and you should find out why that person has called out a safe word. So that's my suggestion to you vanilla people out there. Signals, those are things someone can, if someone will even put up a fist, something that's abnormal in play, not a middle finger, because sometimes you can be playful with someone and do that, but seriously, something that you wouldn't do. For the vanilla community, it's probably a lot easier. You're not tied up. You're not necessarily that. But even things like blinking eyes, like a head tilt. I mean, there are natural things you should all be looking for to know someone's uncomfortable. And it is your responsibility to know that. And, I know people drink, and I know misunderstandings have happened, but maybe you shouldn't drink around people you're not familiar with. And I know everyone's going to say, "Oh, you sound like an old man, Rob." But no, this is true. Remove drinking from decision making, and we probably have a lot less misunderstandings. Drinking, drugs, all those things can lead to misunderstandings or worse. And we don't want those things. So those are decisions you have to make. It's okay to say, "I'm going to wait until later. I want to wait." And if you're worried you're not going to be able to sleep with them because when they sober up, they're not going to want to, you just answered the question. You get that? You just answered the question about what consent is. Right then and there, you don't have consent if you think someone won't say that yes when they're sober. I want you to understand that. If you ever thought that, then you had a very dangerous idea in your head, and you should not think that way. You don't have to get someone drunk or let them drink. And I know some people, I'm not talking about the person who has a glass of wine or a little bit of that. That's not going to impair too much judgment on most people. We're talking about when someone is drunk off their butt. Now, honestly, I don't play with anyone who even drinks or does any drugs. So that's just a personal choice. Outside of course, medical stuff. And that's where we have ask about medical conditions or health issues that the sub might have, and ask if the sub has anything that could trigger any PTS or emotional issues. Just really think about how many of you in the vanilla sphere have never asked someone if they're going to be triggered. And I don't like that word generally because I think it's misused, but it does happen. People really get triggered. And some people do have PTSD and emotional issues from their childhood. I know I have it. I don't like to talk about it because I think it has been overused, and I know I have it. I can tell you the moment it happened. I can tell you how it's messed me up. And and these are things I actually tell people that I'm going to be intimate with. Notice I said going to be intimate. See, I don't rush into a sexual relationship for these reasons. And I'm not telling you how to live your life. You do you. I'm just telling you about consent tonight. You either listen to this or you don't. but this is the truth about it. And some people are not going to like this conversation because they're going to find maybe they are doing things wrong. Maybe they're putting themselves in harm's way. It's the point of tonight's conversation. It's an uncomfortable one on purpose, unless you understand consent, and then you're going to be cheering this conversation. But the PTSD and emotional issues, that's something very important to have those conversations and to be able to have them. Again, if you can't have those conversations, then you shouldn't be having a conversation about having sex and being intimate with someone because you're not ready. Do not try anything new or unexpected without a sub without permission. With a sub without permission. Again, if you're in the vanilla world, this goes again. I know that we, as teenagers, we're taught that you're just supposed to go with the flow, and especially guys, are always taught to try to move and make the moves. And maybe we need to walk away from that as human beings. Maybe we need to stop making moves and start having conversations and teach that to our younger generation. And I know that gets uncomfortable, so I'm not going to put an age cap. You put the age cap you think is responsible to start having these conversations. But again, if you're afraid that asking a person is going to make them say no, then they're not ready for that. And yeah, it's going to kill some of the spontaneity, but it's going to make everything a lot better for everyone in the long run because you're building bridges of actual trust. And if someone is the type of person who doesn't respect that, then that's a red flag. You should understand, well, if this person can't respect me going slow, then maybe that's a problem. Maybe we need to teach people to slow down with their choices in relationships. Just think about that. You need to take a test to drive a car. You need to take a test to go. You even have to apply for permits to go to fish. You have to get a permit to travel. It's called a visa outside of a country. You know what I mean? A passport and all that stuff. You have to get these things. The two things that they don't seem to regulate is who you sleep with, which should be your choice, but there should be some conversation in that and having a child. And again, conversations are important, especially before, and this is probably not going to be a popular thing, but whatever, it is what it is. You should probably have the conversation if you're going to be sexually active with someone. What happens if someone, and if this is a situation where someone can get pregnant because of this situation. This does not apply to people who are in relationships where pregnancy is not an issue. But if you can get pregnant from the act, what happens next? Those are all things you should be talking about before having sex. Yeah, it might not sound sexy, but it certainly will be able to let you make decisions better and understand who you are actually sharing yourself with. All right, so here we go. Both the sub and the dom are responsible to let their play partners know their experience levels and lack of experience and or skill. Now, I'm not saying that you have to tell everyone how many people you slept with. In the BDSM culture, it's more about skill levels. So, you know, a submissive who doesn't know anything doesn't come in and ask for something she's not aware of and then suddenly feels like she's had something violated, not understanding what she just agreed to. If someone knows they're brand new and out of the box, a newbie, in our comic book series, it's called Fetish Babies, then the dominant person might know, hey, they don't understand what they're asking for. Let me go slow. And if you find out as a submissive person, this guy's calling himself, or a woman is calling themselves a master or a mistress, but they've only been doing this for 4 months, that's not a red flag, but a cautionary flag. That's the yellow flag on the track. And start to get to know where they've learned the things they've learned. And for the record, I have had, from self-bondage to play partners to study, 3 decades of experience and study. So I have been around a lot, and that doesn't mean I'm a master of all skills. I am not. I don't do shibari. I don't do flogging. There are things I don't do despite that 30 years of experience. And that sort of stays with the things I like to do versus my partners. There are things I might want to learn, and I'll tell my partner I'm new to this. And so they're aware, and where they can give me feedback as well to tell me if I'm doing it right or wrong. I don't fake it till you make it. It doesn't work in the comic industry, and it certainly doesn't work here. All right, so Never play if you or your submissive has taken alcohol or drugs, even certain prescription drugs. That's right, certain prescription drugs, depending on they are, kind of like Vicodin. You don't want to play if you're on Vicodin if you're the submissive. Drugs can impair judgment and side effects should be taken into consideration before playing. Some will argue about these rules. This is my class, so it's my rules. Now, this was taken out of a different part of the story. That's the class part. But right now, you guys are in my class about consent, so don't argue with the teacher. All right, failure to follow these simple rules can ruin a relationship or worse, hurt someone, or even worse still, kill someone. As a dom, meaning a dominant person, you will be arrested for abuse. Without consent, doing certain things is in fact abuse. Subs put their bodies, mind, and souls into vulnerable positions. Your mistakes could live on their bodies as scars for years to come, or leave an emotional scar that stays with them forever. If you're scared to be upfront and get proper consent for things you want to do to a submissive, you aren't strong enough to be a dom in the first place. And again, this should translate into the vanilla world. If you are afraid of asking a person because they could reject you, then you're not ready to get consent. And I don't know what else I can tell you about that. Then that bitter honesty, that hard pill to swallow. You need to be able to say, hey, I want to have sex with you. I want to be sexual with you. I want to touch your body. I want to be able to have access to you. Are you okay with that? That's what we do in the BDSM community. And I think that's why you hear therapists talking about how sexually positive BDSM culture can be. It doesn't mean we don't have bad operators. Of course we do. My book is about that. The first issue especially. Here's the deal, guys. I want everyone to have a great sexual experience out there. I do. I don't think these worlds we currently live in prohibit us to be fully healthy sexual people. I think that it's always possible if we're willing to put the work in. So what's the work mean? It means talking to your partner. It comes down to something as simple as conversations, not while you're hot and bothered, not while you're drinking. In text messages, you guys can ask a lot. Some people might not feel comfortable having face-to-face conversations and admitting, hey, I want you sexually. Doing that on a phone makes things a little easier for people. We're in an information age where we can talk to people in texts. You guys can see it's 23 minutes. We're going to be wrapping the program up in a minute. That's how important this has been to have this conversation. You don't want to get consent wrong. And of course, that could lead to legal problems. It can lead to someone feeling they've been abused and even worse, raped. There are people who will twist something. There are people who will agree to things and have regrets. Yes. And I don't want to get into that. But yes, that does happen. But if you're someone who constantly is trying to strive to get consent from people, and you actually do strive to get consent with a person, even if there is a misunderstanding, you will always be able to go, well, didn't I do this? Didn't I do that? Didn't I do this? So once you start to say all that, the person, when you're having an adult conversation with, or heaven forbid authorities are brought into it, and you say those things, that will help you be cleared. But you have to do those things. If you're getting so drunk you don't remember, that's a problem. If you're going out to just use people sexually and you don't have the balls to tell them all I want from you is sex, I do think you're violating consent. I'm not saying you have to marry a person if you met someone, but you should at least say, hey, I know we just met, but I'd like to take you home and I'd like to see if we can find a comfortable way for us to share our bodies. I know it sounds a little corny, but you're telling someone what your intention is. That's consent, guys. Like it or not, that's what getting consent is. And you don't have to be blunt about it. You don't have to say, hey, I think you're fucking hot. I want to fuck you. No, you don't have to do that. You can simply say, I'd like to share my body with you. I would like to see, if we can explore each other sexually. I would like to see if you're willing to consent to coming over and experiencing each other in a sexual nature. You can even just, if you're uncomfortable with that type of straightforward talk, you could just simpler things. And I'm going to give you simpler ways to get consent. Ready for it? Ask about condoms. Hey, we're going to head back to the house. Should we stop and get condoms? Now, I don't care if someone says condoms. I don't care if they're in a club and they whisper, I want you to take me home and fuck me. I don't care if they write you a note that says, I want to have sex with you. I need everyone to understand this. Everyone has the right to remove consent, including in the middle of sex. If you are having sex with someone and they tell you, hey, get off of me, I'm not liking this, you get off of a person immediately. Consent can be withdrawn at any point for any reason. It is not for you to decide if that's a good reason. On the other side of it, just to be clear, if you have consented up until the point where you have allowed sex to take place, even if you withdraw consent, if they stop right away, they have not broken consent. If you feel the next day regret over something, I don't care what anyone says or how controversial this is the truth. It is not any consent violation because the next day you don't feel right about something. I'm not going to talk about why you don't feel right about something. Those are personal things, but you don't have the right to give someone your consent and then remove it later. That is wrong as well. That is not how consent works. Consent works at the moment. You cannot go back to the past. You can't live in the past. You can't change the past. That's it. So if you have consented and you knew you consented to sex, and there are ways that many people consent without saying it. Perfect example. If a guy gives, and this is a great one for you guys, and I'm going to give this one to you, and I forgot where I heard it, but it's really good. Hand the woman the condom. The woman gets to hold the condom, and when she gives you the condom, that's the green light. You be a very good gentleman and say, hey, I don't want any misunderstandings. Here's the condom for this evening. You get to control it. So whether we want to like it or not, women control the beginning of a sexual relationship. And a lot of times the entire sexual relationship during a relationship. They are the ones who choose the partners more so. They are generally the ones who choose when sex happens and when sex actually starts to happen. It is just inherently how it is. Of course, this doesn't go into a male and male relationship or different dynamics. This is a general statement. This is for the people in the room who are males who might be concerned about consent. This will work that way. I'm sure it can work in other ways. You can modify it to fit you so you understand consent. Same sex, you still need the same consent. For gentlemen, I would bargain to say that maybe the gentlemen should be handing each other condoms. And for same-sex relationships, same thing. Or a woman might actually say, I'm comfortable with you sexually, and hand the condom to the man and tell the man, I'm green lighting you. When you feel comfortable, go ahead and put it on. These are ways to talk about things without talking about them. We all understand. A few other things about consent. If you lie to get consent, you never got consent. Don't care. I don't care anything about it if it's anything. This includes what I believe to be trying to guilt someone into having sex with you. That counts, and that's coercion, especially if you're making up stories to have sex so they'll have sex with you. This was popular in television series and in movies showing men being players. I believe that to be non-consensual forms of action. The laws do not, to be clear, laws do not agree with me on this. But I think if you are a person who is also trying to use ambitions of a person, the manager, employee things, anyone who offers something for sexual favors that, and I'll be honest, aren't willing to then fulfill, that's a violation of consent. Now, if they fulfill it and it's a business transaction, you're all adults, you figure it out on your own. I'm not going to talk badly about sex workers. That's a person choosing to take a service. Every state, law, and country decides what's legal and what's not. Even in the United States, there's debates over what should be and shouldn't be. Check OnlyFans for more on that. But consent needs to be consent. And guys, here's something I need you to know. Unless a woman asks you for a dick picture, keep your fucking dick in your pants. That is consent violation. Is sending someone a flirty message a consent violation? Look, that gets a little murky. Let's put it this way. Be careful what you're sending to people. Everyone wants to be a flirty person, but it doesn't always work the way you want it to work. Start slow with the person. Find out if they're in a relationship. Start building your avenues to consent. Always look at it as, I have to earn consent for the things I want. I hope I've answered things. If we need to do another video on consent, please leave your questions in this comment. Reach out to me privately on Facebook, Mr. Anderson. And I know some people might not like to have this conversation publicly in a chat room format. So I am here. I am going to leave you guys with that. I think we spent 30 minutes talking about this. I could talk about this for another hour, believe it or not. However, I know I'd be going back over some of the grounds on it really quickly. Because again, I'd be silly not to mention it. We're on Kickstarter right now. The Continuum presents Heroics. I'm going to play the video for it because this is how much I believe in Continuum and how much it's going to be part of every video I do. So please bear with me, those of you watching, and consider backing this, which is no longer coming soon, by the way. It's actually live. But welcome to the Continuum's second issue as it hits Kickstarter with a superhero landing, and it's out to explore heroics, featuring the origin of Eightball and the beginnings of the Hardcore Chronicles. This is In Harm's Way, Part 1. An angel from Sad Hell takes a stand as we see this angel's origin. It's the angel of Sad Hell. A young woman who glows blue has to decide what her future is as she tries to run from the past while playing hero. It's going to be a blue Christmas. A hero takes on an after-school job and gets more than he bargained for, along with his team and the legacy of the feud, the after-school job. And Mr. Anderson is back with a new tale about a reluctant hero who'd rather be wrestling and is now heroing by the hour. And the Continuum changes forever in this issue. Back it now so you can find out how. Thank you for watching. Considering that. Like I said, this is on Kickstarter right now. You guys can get it, including the story about Jenna. Jenna is actually a Kinkster along with the rest of us, and she is. Go back to last week's video. You'll see. I explain a lot about it, and find me on the Comic-Con highway. We will have a panel about sexual representation and diversity in comics. If you're in the Tampa Bay area, come see me at Tampa Bay Comic-Con. You can talk to me during the panel or privately at my table. That's it right now. That's the end of the show. Thank you for tuning in. I will probably see you live in the fall, but we will have a lot shorter than tonight's video, versions of Fetish Friday, which is, of course, Freaky Friday, but I've been calling it Fetish Friday during the summer because we've been basing everything on fetish. We'll have some more freakier stuff in the fall, probably do a horror thing for Halloween, because Halloween's coming, people. Forget winter. Halloween's on its way. I hope you guys learned something tonight. I hope you enjoyed the conversation. I hope you continue the conversation with your playmates. I'm out of here. Thank you for tuning in. And remember, stay kinky, my friends. And we're out of here.